Okay, Tom Heck, I'm glad we got to sit down and do this.
I'm excited to be here.
All right, so why are you throwing yourself in this political meat grinder?
Well, I'm just disappointed in what's going on in the state of Nevada. I mean, we're losing our freedoms. We're taking the Second Amendment and messing it up, and it's happening nationwide. CRT, we haven't funded public school vouchers for kids so parents can have a choice. We don't have voter ID. There's just a whole host of things that 80% of the population of the United States support, in Democrats and Republicans. Want to repeal the commerce tax. The budget, we keep growing the budget. I talked to a legislature one time. He says, well, I said, do you cut budgets? How do you decide what programs to cut? He says, oh, we don't do that. We just determine how much we're going to raise the budget by. That's criminal. I'm going to cut the budget by 10% in the first year of my first budget, and I'm going to push it through because there's a lot of waste in Nevada, and we need to find things that are wasteful and eliminate them, and we need to keep the things that need to be done, and we also need to focus on things that aren't being done that should be done.
Yeah. Boy, that was a lot to digest, but you're right, 100%. It's a messy time. It's a really messy time. Critical race theory in the schools is an interesting one, troubling. But
it's Marxism indoctrination of our children.
That's exactly what it is.
It's disgusting.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
It takes me back to the brown shirt days, and that's inappropriate.
Right, and yet the people who are doing it are the ones who think that they're in the right, but they've been led down this path. How do you deal with that? How are we going to deal with explaining to people that they've been led down this path and that it's a dangerous path?
Well, my focus in my campaign is on the silent majority and being a voice for the silent majority. I focus on truth-telling at the expense of political correctness and doing the right things. Yeah. And the bottom line is common sense solutions to produce successful outcomes. I want metrics on every bill that's passed in our legislature, and if they don't meet the metrics, I want them to sunset. So each legislative action would have a sunset provision. That's how we get rid of the bad stuff.
Wow. What's your background? How did you come to this place where you're looking at the efficiency of government and everything? Do you have a background in I don't even know what you do for a living.
Well, I'm an Air Force Academy graduate.
Uh-huh.
I spent 22 years in the U.S. Air Force. I have 3 graduate degrees. I worked for 4 cities and a county, and I was a town manager. My last job, I ran the logistics for the Reagan Ballistic Missile Test Site out in Kwajalein in the South Pacific.
Whoa.
I had 7 islands and a launch facility, 860 people, and produced our own power, water, and took care of our own waste. So I have a huge background, with very diverse, and very capable of making decisions. Oftentimes in the military, some of the decisions I made were life and death. I mean, I was a contingency war planner for many years, and I'm really good at what I do.
Holy cow! So just rewinding, putting myself in your shoes, I can understand why all of the stuff that's going on right now pisses you off.
That's right.
Even more than it pisses me off, which is saying a lot.
Well, yeah. I mean, my dad was a Marine in World War II and Korean War. He had 2 Purple Hearts. He would be rolling over in his grave about the stuff going on in his country, in our country. It's pathetic. I mean, this is Marxism, pure and simple. I mean, there's a book out, American Marxism by Levine, and it's really telling that. You know the story of the frog in the water pot. I mean, if you put a frog into boiling water, he jumps out. You put him in a slow boil, and he'll cook. And that's what's happening to Americans. They are cooking in Marxism. It is sad. It is terrible. Needs to stop. But I tell you, the silent majority, they're going to vote this time, and this is going to go away pretty quick.
Yeah, I watched that documentary that's been floating around with Thomas Sowell. Talking about the same idea. He grew up as a Marxist and actually made it all the way through the university and everything as a Marxist. And it finally took getting a job in government to realize how screwed up it was. And now he's a libertarian. He's completely flipped. So
I worked for the city of Reno.
Yeah.
I was the deputy public works director for the city of Reno. I put a hiring freeze on, and until I got to 10%, I didn't hire any additional people.
So what was the pushback like when you did that?
Oh, it was horrible. But the bottom line was productivity went up, people were happier, and I got the job done with 10% less. Most government agencies that I've worked in a bunch, including the Air Force, a 10% cut in their people made productivity go up. It's amazing.
I bet.
And accountability, I instilled accountability. I held people accountable. But one of the things that I found in my career is oftentimes it's not that people are failing, it's that supervisors are failing. They fail to give employees feedback on what they're doing right and what they're not doing right. And that's where it falls apart. And we have too many supervisors that are conflict avoidant. And you can't be conflict avoidant because without conflict, there's no growth.
Right. Well, and I've heard from countless friends and family members who have worked in government that whenever they get somebody as a coworker who becomes a royal pain in the ass, they end up getting promoted. It's like just to get them out of the department, instead of getting rid of them, they get rid of them by shifting them up the ladder. And I wonder how much of that has happened. Have you seen that happen in the city government stuff you've done?
State government.
State government.
Someone I'm very close to was in state government, probably the smartest woman I ever met. And she was put in the corner for 7 years. And that was in the Health and Human Services in the state. And what they did in Health and Human Services, they were violating the law. They were violating, there's Medicaid fraud going on ad infinitum in the Health and Human Services. I don't know if you know, but almost 3/4 of the budget is spent by Health and Human Services. And they are
Where's it go? Where's that money going?
I guess to Medicaid, to child care, on and on.
Those are
you know they kill about 100 kids a year.
How?
Under their care. It's under their care. The one story I want to share with you is this: these two parents had a kid. The parents were, I guess you would almost say, developmentally disabled, and so they were under the care of a state social worker, and they had a baby. The baby died of starvation.
Wow.
And the state, usually the care manager is out there once a month. You can't not see that a baby's dying of malnutrition, because if they are, they're crying all the time.
Right.
But they prosecuted the parents when the state was at fault. And like you said, the person that did that got promoted.
God.
I mean, it's totally disgusting. I'm going to fix that. I'm going to basically fire the top 3 layers in the state of Nevada and start over with the best of the best nationwide for Nevada. Nevada deserves the best of the best.
I agree. I hope you're able to pull it off. You don't seem crooked enough. I don't know. It seems like the only guys that ever get elected are the ones that can raise a pile of money, and they do it from very wealthy people who want to make money off the state.
I'm not a politician, and I'm beholden to no one but God.
How are you going to get around that? How are you going to raise money?
I'm thick-skinned.
Yeah.
People are going to realize that I'm the best shot of changing the way business is done in Nevada, and they're going to vote for me, and they're going to send me money. And I certainly encourage people to go to my website, thomasheck.org, and you'll find out everything you wanted to know about me and then some. I got the top 10 on there of the top things I'm going to do as governor, as the next governor.
Yeah. Okay. So next, critical race theory. You've got Washoe County School District. You've got Clark County. How does the governor work with? I know this much about government.
Very easily. That's an executive order.
Really?
Basically, you just have your education department, based on an executive order, stop critical race theory and get it out of the schools.
So how did it get in there in the first place?
Well, the school boards are independent, and the state is allowing it.
Okay.
And it just needs to be stopped.
Yeah.
This is exactly what Marxists do.
Yeah.
They take over your children's minds, and then that's how they take over your government and every other agency in the country.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that the appeal towards Marxism is that so many people see the failures of capitalism, or at least the seemingly failures of capitalism, in that we have a lot of challenges. We've got an income disparity. We've got the ultra rich getting ultra richer, and we've got the poor getting poorer, and there's chaos in a lot of ways. Do you think that a lot of these people are being led down the path that, just like Karl Marx originally said, that's the nature of capitalism? And only now we've got this modified version of Marxism, right? We've got this one that's wrapped around race because they found a hot button that they can attach it to, and that's allowing us to create these disparities between the populations. How do you think people are getting to that place where they think that's a good idea? That's what I've been having the hardest time wrapping my head around. Because as soon as we can understand it, right? It's like the art of war, right? Sun Tzu is, once you understand your enemy, you can defeat them. But you may not want to, if I understand it correctly.
Our overwhelming force.
Right. Well, there's that. But I mean, look at how the war on drugs has worked out. Like that's gone the opposite direction. So I wonder how people are being led down this path, and where can we find an understanding, a mutual understanding, where the best thing for our kids is not sending them down this racist path, even though they feel like it's something that they owe minorities or whatever. How are they getting there? It's just a crazy thought, and we don't have to solve this problem now because I doubt we will. But I just find it an interesting subject.
Well, I think the problem is that it's the belief that government knows better.
Yeah.
And when you have the government that thinks it knows better, I mean, you should see the number of people that show up for the Washoe County Board school meetings. It's unbelievable, the numbers are.
Yeah.
But the board, I mean, they're stifling freedom of speech. They're going about their business the way they want to do it, and they're ignoring the will of the people. And the silent majority are just starting to wake up to this issue. But it's basically these people get in government, and they believe that they know better, and that they want to indoctrinate people to their way of doing business. I believe that, and I guess it's a choice. Do you want to be the land of opportunity, the land of freebies, or do you want to be the land of dictatorship and socialism? And because as soon as you take away capitalism from people's motivation, then there's no reason to work.
Yeah.
And if you look across the world, every place socialism was done, from Venezuela to Russia to China, it's failed.
Right.
I mean, China even had to go to capitalism so many years ago so that they could be prosperous and make the money. But China was funded primarily by the U.S. trade deficit. But that's another story with economics.
So that's they went with capitalism, but they're capitalist on the outside and communist on the inside.
Right.
So they can have big government, big control amongst a handful of people on the inside, on the outside, make all that money because that's the only way you can create that trade deficit.
That's right. I mean, you look at Russia all those years. It was decaying from the inside during the Cold War.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden Gorbachev took over, and he basically opened it up, and that was the only reason they began to prosper.
Right. Did you ever see that movie or series on Netflix called Wild Wild Country? It's about the Rajneeshis. They moved from India. It's a cult. It was a cult, and they went up to Oregon. They found the U.S. Constitution to be the most likely to be okay with letting them do what they wanted to do, kind of like a hands-off idea. Right. This is the '80s, so we were far more hands-off back then. But they were anti-capitalist on the inside. On the inside, it was like free love and drugs, and it was a utopia that they created, basically. But on the outside, they were selling products, and they accumulated a lot of wealth. And really, until they got infiltrated by the U.S. government, it kind of was a utopia. It became chaos. I won't spoil it for you because there was some big spoilers in there. But whenever you have a free weekend, that's a good binge.
Well, I think one of the things that the average American doesn't know. Have you seen Hillary's America?
Yes, I did.
I mean, I'm pretty educated. I didn't know it was that the Democrats were the ones that fought civil rights all the way up into the 60s. Yeah. Starting with the Civil War. I mean, they were the ones, and now they profess to be the friends of the minorities. I think that's a bunch of BS.
They did a hell of a PR job.
Oh, they did.
Yeah.
And you know what? On the flip side, I think the Republicans are weak, and that's why we are where we are, because the Republicans want to be gentlemen and gentlewomen and going into these arguments. The problem is you don't take a knife to a gunfight, and we are in a gunfight. This is war against Marxism, and if we don't wake up, it's going to be over before we know it without firing a shot.
Yeah, I think you're right. What do you think about what Sisolak has done so far in his reign?
Well, I think he's way in over his head.
Yeah.
If you look back at his experience, he has very limited experience with business, with government. He just was a commissioner in a town in Las Vegas, and he's following dictates because he doesn't know any better. But I tell you, this mask garbage, that's loss of freedom. If any American thinks it's not loss of freedom, just look at it. The other thing is, the masks don't work. I mean, you can find all kinds of articles that says the masks don't work. I was in the military, we had gas masks. The first we did is we put a mask on and got a seal. There's no seal with these masks.
No.
Instead of spraying out the front, they spray out the sides and the top.
Yeah. I could see like two guys drunk in a bar, spit talking, are not going to be wearing masks anyway, but hypothetically, if they were, okay, they're probably going to help a little bit. I've been spit on in a bar before. Fine.
Well, yeah.
I'll give you that. But outside of that, walking around, unless someone picks an argument with me in a store, they're not getting anything on them. And no more than what a mask would let out anyway. Because the virus is very small.
Right, it goes through the mask.
It's like putting pantyhose over a fire hose.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not going to work.
But basically, we're locking people down. We destroyed our economy.
Yeah.
I mean, and what people don't realize is that the small, as the New York Stock Exchange list, the small business, the medium business, the large business, they're doing fine. What happened?
They're doing better than ever.
It's the people doing those minimum wage jobs, the two parents the two kids that are trying to survive working 2 and 3 jobs, those are the ones that's affected. Those are the 9 million people without jobs right now. And those are the ones that are suffering. But people don't understand it. And it's those voters that they're going to speak up this time in droves because those are the ones that got screwed. And it's their kids that they're trying to get out of these bad schools. That's why funded vouchers are so important, because if the money follows the child, then the child goes to the school that the parent wants them to do well at. And if the parents have choice and they vote with their feet enough, these bad schools will close.
So where are we on the voucher program? I've heard a lot of thrown around about
Well, Sandoval passed it,
Okay.
but he was never willing to fund it. And he was probably the biggest rhino we ever had. You know, he and the Republican legislature passed the largest tax increase in our history, but they never funded the vouchers. Sisolak hasn't funded the vouchers. Parents don't have a choice yet.
So, I mean, but you can get your kids can go to charter school. Like there's charter schools here in Reno and they can go and it's no cost. How does that, is that just, they're getting just the federal funding? Is that what's going on?
I don't understand. I think they're paying, but parents are paying for charter schools.
No, like you can go to, because I looked at, what is it, AACT over past the airport over there for my son. And he didn't want to do
I would tell you then I'm not familiar with that because my understanding, all these private schools that they go to, parents have to pay.
I know most of them are like the Coral Academy and those you have to pay, but there are some charter schools where I think they just get the federal money. We should look at.
Well, it may be the charter schools are based on merit, and maybe you have to have certain grade levels or certain abilities to go to those charter schools.
We did have to apply, and there was a lottery, and we didn't get the lottery. That's what it was. The other one was Davidson Academy. That one's at UNR. That one's like really top notch. And that one's free if you're local.
But again, going back to the two parents with 2 kids working 2 and 3 jobs, they don't have the money to have a choice.
Yeah.
And if you take the public funds and attach them to the kids, wherever the kid goes, the money goes.
Right. Yeah, that'd be the move.
Yes.
That would be the move. So.
And then these bad schools would close and bad teachers would go away.
So that can get funded directly through the governor?
Right, well, through the legislature.
So
The
back to
legislature always
again.
Right.
So then it just becomes the PR.
It's part of the budget.
Can you get those? Well, we've got a Democrat-controlled legislature. One would think they'd be all for spending more money.
No, they fought it tooth and nail.
Why? Why would they fight that?
Because they're beholding to the teachers union.
The union wants it.
That's why they don't want to do that. Oh. And then the unions, they would be forced to close when their schools closed with the bad teachers. They would force to have to explain that and be holding to their constituents as to why they don't have a job.
So it's the teachers union and probably also critical race theory, because you're not going to teach that in your home.
No.
Or charter school.
That's right. You got to indoctrinate the kids so that they vote for you in the future.
Interesting.
And why do you think all these migrants are coming in that are illegals? Because they want their votes.
Yeah.
And so they're giving them. I mean, why are we giving money to illegals? Why are we they don't talk about, we're funding their education. We have to fund their education because it's a loser for the country.
Right.
But it's about $32,000 a year for each kid that they have in school.
Wow.
And then in California, they were giving $500 to each illegal. And then they were also in California, they are now providing Medicare to illegal seniors. And what about that family of 2 and 2 kids working 2 and 3 jobs? That's the silent majority that I care about.
Right. And the mass exodus of people leaving California with that same ideology coming here are going to just bring it here.
Well,
if we let them.
I was thinking that too, but you know what? In 2003, 4, in that time frame, most of the ones leaving California were liberals. Now we're finding that most of the ones, finally, the conservatives given up. So the majority of those coming across now are conservative, is what I've heard and what I've seen.
Might turn Nevada red again.
It might turn Nevada red again. Of course, California's, they're in the toilet. They just need to be flushed.
Make Nevada red again.
Exactly.
We raise some campaign funds that way.
Well, when I'm the next governor, I'm going to really work hard with the Republican Party to turn this red so we can reelect Donald Trump in 2024.
Yeah. So what do you think about the election? Did you go down the rabbit hole with all the electioneering stuff that went on, like what's going on in Maricopa County right now and any of that? Did you follow any of this election rigging stuff?
Well,
it's crazy out there conspiracy theory stuff.
Well,
but
you got to look at the difference between Trump and Biden was 42,000 votes across 4 key states.
Mm-hmm.
Nevada was 7,000.
Mm-hmm.
Those are pretty tiny numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard many people say there was no fraud. Well, absolutely not true.
The question is not zero.
The question is was there enough fraud to change 42,000 votes?
Right.
And the more and more I see, supposedly in the next couple of weeks, Arizona's audit's going to come out, and they're saying it's going to be ugly, but we'll see.
Yeah.
You know, Georgia already found that Fulton County, 60% of the votes were bad.
Wow. But what did they do about it?
I don't know. The question that my buddy and I talk about is, okay, so they find out that Trump really won. What's the mechanism, process for turning that around? I don't know that there's a provision for that. There certainly is not a provision in our Constitution for that.
Well, the Dems ran for 4 years on that Trump was a Russian asset, and they were trying to get rid of him that way. And I don't know if they were planning on just installing Hillary at that point. I think they probably knew it was a moot point. They knew it was just a game, just a distraction. But I don't know where we go from that.
Well, amazingly, we had a president who was impeached twice, who had probably every lawsuit in the nation filed against him. Mm-hmm. He was the first president in my lifetime to complete his campaign promises as I saw it.
Yeah.
And so it can be done, but it has to be done by a businessman. And I said 15 years ago, our problems in America aren't going to be solved until we have a businessman in the White House. And in September of 2015, I began telling people he was going to win.
Yeah.
And I told my brother that for 2020, and my brother says, I agree with you, Tom, except unless it's an unfair election. So there's so much stuff out there. I think Trump's people told him that he needed 67 million votes to win. He got 75 million. Biden got 81 million votes, but Obama, he only had 76 or something like that.
Right.
And so how does Biden, who spent his whole entire campaign in the basement, get 81 million votes? I don't know.
Because Orange Man bad.
Who knows?
I know, it's tragic.
There's too many things that make it suspect.
There was one campaign promise that I can think of that he didn't follow through on. And I don't think he had any choice in the matter, but it was a really good campaign promise that I was very excited about. And that was that for every new law going on the books, 2 had to come off. And I would have loved to see that happen. I don't know that there's a mechanism for that to happen. But
it wasn't laws. It was regulations.
Regulations.
And basically the bottom line, for every one that went on the books, they turned out 21 came off.
Really?
Yes, it was huge.
Really?
I mean, they dumped all kinds of regulations, probably some that we'll never even know about.
Wow.
No, it was huge. Go look that one up. That was a huge number. Because that was their goal, was 2 for 1.
Yeah. And he did 21 for
21.
Wow. That's pretty awesome.
Oh,
I do want to look that up. Because that was I misunderstood. I was thinking it was laws, and I was like, I don't know how you do that, but it sounds pretty great.
Yeah. Well, Congress can't agree on anything, but
no.
And success in U.S. Congress is when they're paralyzed.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know what? The problem is people don't get it. This inflation is going to be roaring. They just passed they're going to pass a 1 trillion infrastructure plan, and then they're going to follow with 3.5 trillion. And from the COVID, we had 7 trillion. Yeah. 7, 3.5, and 1. Mm-hmm. What's that? $11.5 trillion pumped into the economy, pushing out, the private enterprises.
But pushed into what part of the economy? It's pushed into the very top. Trickle down here for you and me and anybody who's lost their job, during COVID, and then a whole pile of it went to the top. This was the biggest upward transfer of wealth in human history. All because of a virus.
Well, you got to look where, you got to look.
That may or may not have originated in a lab.
Right, it's all socialist programs. I mean, what's interesting, people don't pay attention to. They name a bill spending lots of money on something that's fun or near and dear to people's hearts.
Something you have to have.
Right, and so it's like less than 10% of the budget. I think the highway portion of this $1 trillion bill, don't quote me, but I think it was like 200 and some billion.
Right.
But all the other stuff is social engineering.
Yeah. Okay, so while we're talking about the federal government, where are you at on Nevada public lands? It's not a very hot topic, but I mean, it used to be back in the day, the Sagebrush Rebellion and all, that the BLM thinks that they own all of this land in Nevada, but they manage the land in Nevada, and yet through federal overreach are maintaining full control of all this land in Nevada. Is there anything that can be done to do that, to return some of these lands to Nevadans, or is it even worth talking about, or we got too
Well, my understanding is there's a law that allows cities to expand into BLM land. So they just have to apply for annexing BLM land so the city can expand. So the cities aren't constricted by the BLM. They just have to apply for it. So there's a mechanism in the law that allows them to annex those land. Now, to turn all the land over, and a lot of that land is for military ranges. I mean, there's the Navy Top Gun out of Fallon, and the Air Force out of Nellis has their equivalent Top Gun. And so that's where they spend their time, on the ranges. And I mean, that's where the land is, on those ranges, so they can fly over it and do supersonic missions and refueling and all other kinds of training that they need to do.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to be second best in a war with the Russians or Chinese.
No, let's hope we never come to it at all.
Exactly.
I mean, even though we seem to be in a Cold War for sure. And I hope it just stays cold.
But we are weak right now.
And
if I was China, I would take Taiwan now.
Yeah.
And that's what's dangerous. When we're weak, then these people start to do things that we may not like. And I doubt Biden will stand up to them.
Right. As a governor, what can you do on the national stage like that?
Well, you do like Governor DeSantis did. You speak up and you take him on. When he's talking trash, you take him on. My thing is, I talked about truth-telling in my focus for campaigning. It's speaking up and truth-telling. In absence of the other side of the story, people believe what they hear. And my goal is always to tell the other side of the story. So when they speak up and talk pablum, I'm going to speak up and say, well, no, this is really what's going on. So what happens? Smart people do one of two things. Either they choose a side and believe it, but the real smart people, they go and research it and come up with their own answer. And that's what I want. I want people to come up with their own answers based on what's in their best interest. And we need to focus on the silent majority and help them, because they ought to have the same opportunities that everyone else has. And not the same, and more opportunities than the illegals that are coming here.
Right.
And then the sad part, I used to feel sorry for these big cities. This discussion with these big cities is they're killing each other off. They voted for these people. If they don't like the squalor that they're living in and the dangerous streets, they need to vote differently. So I can't feel sorry for them anymore. New York's, I think I'm told, 7-1 Democrats to Republicans in New York. California, most of the elections in California, you'll find 2 Democrats running, because that's how their elections shake out. The top 2 vote getters get to go to the general. Republicans rarely make that.
So how are you going to work? I mean, we've got a Democrat-controlled legislature and Senate. How are you going to work with these Democrats to make things happen? How do you do that?
Well, first off, you do it in layers. The first layer, you don't let them pass any more garbage, socialist, Marxist issues. So you veto everything that comes back that's garbage. Okay. Second, you work with the Republicans and get them to be stronger and not sit there and make these things bipartisan. This current legislature that just passed, the Republicans felt like if they engaged, they could make a few tweaks on the edges, and then they voted for it. You vote against the garbage, and you make it nonpartisan, and you make it partisan, make them do it partisan-wise, but they say, well, we've got it a little bit better. Well, Republicans just are not tough enough. We're at war. If you believe we're at war with Marxism, then Republicans got to be tougher. We can't. I listen to some of the senior Republican Party officials. They'll say, well, it's okay to have rhinos because we can kind of tweak them now and then. No, we need to vote for conservatives for the values we support, and then secondarily, then we try to help them move on the bills that we need them to move on. And same thing with Republicans. If they're going to put stuff forward that's garbage, I'm going to veto it. You're going to see more vetoes than you've ever seen in your lifetime in the Nevada government if they're not doing the things that are consistent with conservative Republican values.
I haven't looked at many of the bills coming across the legislature, but are they like in Congress where they're like 5,000 pages, or are they doing any of this stuff where they've got teams of lawyers that are writing a bunch of nonsense?
I haven't seen the numbers of pages.
Yeah.
But I mean, they were trying to take the concealed carry weapons permits, and they're basically any place that had any people gathering, they were not allowing them. Wow. That was their initial effort. It kind of died into a weak nothingness, but that's what they were trying to do. I'm going to make this a constitutional carry state, and I'm going to seek a federal waiver for silencers.
Who's motivated to do that? I mean, so if all these bills, let's be honest, if these bills are not written by the legislators themselves, they're usually written by lawyers, and lawyers paid for by big business.
I think it's some lobbyists too, right?
Right. So lobbyists, lawyers,
yep.
People who are paid by big business to put these things in front of people that they helped get in office in the first place and have control of. If they're the ones that are doing this, then who's motivated I mean, I guess it could be the gun manufacturers themselves, just because nobody sold more guns than Obama. But I wonder.
I think Biden's right up there. He's catching up quickly.
I think he actually may have surpassed Obama. Yeah, but that was. I just wonder who's motivated to do this, because anybody who's paying attention realizes that these gun-free zones are where all of the shootings happen.
It is. I mean, and this whole narrative about police shootings is bogus.
Yeah.
If you look at the numbers from 2016 to 2019, 1,000 shootings, 25% blacks, 50% whites, and 21% Hispanics and cats and dogs and miscellaneous. So it's bogus. And then I think it was in 2020 that they were talking about, there were, 15 shootings, 6 were black, 9 were white.
This was here? Or Nevada?
Nationwide.
Oh, okay.
And and the other thing is, they did a study, and the study was, well, what causes, is racism the reason blacks are shot?
Right.
And what there's 2 liberal reports out. What the liberal reports found was that it had nothing to do with racism. You know what it had to do with?
Fear of going back to jail.
No, it had to do with committing a crime.
Right.
Every altercation with a cop for shooting related to they were committing a crime.
Wow.
So that's the common denominator, not racism.
Right.
Unlike the cartoon, the dad's teaching his little son,
Yeah.
if you don't get your way, son, just yell racism.
Right.
And that's garbage.
Right.
And right now, yes, this country is racist. It's becoming very racist against whites and Asians.
It's very unfortunate.
It is sad.
Yeah.
I mean, Harvard and Yale were sued by the Asians. California just wanted to, they did away with the SATs and ACTs because the Asians do so well in those.
Well, because they're racist.
Yeah.
I read the articles.
And the bottom line, all these applications we do nationwide, we need to strip pictures, we need to strip race, creed, color, and anything else, date of birth, anything else that tells you anything about them other than their merit. This is a country on opportunity and merit. Same thing with teachers. You know, we talk about the schools. Do you know that in Nevada, we've funded this school system in the last 8 years, probably somewhere close to 40%. I think in 2018 it was 30%, but we're close to 40% increased funding for the schools. And you know what? We have successfully achieved 49th or 50 in those last 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
I mean, isn't that disgusting?
It is.
So
40% increase?
Yes. Wow. We keep throwing money at a problem. It's not a money problem.
For masks? What are they spending this new money on?
I don't know
we
what
still
they're
have to
spending
buy
on.
cookie dough every year.
And then the other thing is this misnomer about teachers' pay. People forget that they're making, most teachers, I think in Nevada, are making close to $60,000 a year.
Transparent Nevada. Have you been on that thing?
No.
Oh my gosh. Transparent Nevada. It's either .com or .org. Google Transparent, DuckDuckGo if you choose. Transparent Nevada. Every government employee, university, school, anyone in the state of Nevada, their salary's on there. Everything's on there, and you can see. The biggest ones are in education, the very top one. Now, there are a lot of them that are, $250,000 administrators, a lot of administrators, but I'm really curious where that extra 40% went.
Yeah, but you got to remember, people forget this. Because a teacher makes $60,000, that's it's for 8 months.
Yeah.
8 months a year, so that's 2/3 of a year.
Yeah.
So you take what they make, $30,000 by half. So they're making $90,000 a year if you include the time in the summer, which they can take a second, third, or fourth job.
Well, and the benefits are incredible.
And the benefits are absolutely incredible.
Yeah, you'll see like a $70,000 salary and $25,000 benefits, or sometimes more.
You know the big difference in the government and the military. When I would go around in the Air Force, when I ran big organizations, they would introduce me as the new guy who just came in. Hi, how are you? I'm your material management specialist. I'm your engineer. I'm your this. I'm your that. When I went to the city of Reno, I went around. I've got 2 years to retire. I get 3 years to retire, 4 years to retire. It's all about the gravy train.
That's how they would say it.
That's what they introduced themselves
How
as.
telling.
Yeah, I rest my case.
Interesting. So why'd you get in the military?
Well, my dad was a Marine. That was one reason. I certainly, the Air Force Academy was the longest 4 years of my life, but the absolute, we called it the RAF, the real Air Force, it was fabulous. I mean, As a captain, I was making decisions that when I went, I took education in industry at Brown and Root. When I went to Brown and Root, most of those guys with 8 years of experience were on a drawing board designing stuff by themselves. I was going to run a 450-man operation with a multi-million-dollar budget, and that's what it is. You have more authority and responsibility in the Air Force at a much younger age than you would in the real world. And those people in the military, they are absolutely superior people. They're exceptional, no matter whether enlisted, officer, etc. The enlisted were just as educated. Most of them had bachelor's degrees and even master's degrees. And they're all smart and very capable. And the thing is, you turn those people loose on a goal and a mission, they're gone. You know, and when I worked for the city of Reno, it was like I think one of the comments they gave, mentor, cajole, and baby, because that's how you had to get people to do things. When I was in Kwajalein, I had $157,000 a year in bonuses I gave out. I had no problem getting people to do anything. You know, the benchmark, back to your schools, the benchmark, if you're at the bottom, there's all kinds of benchmarks above you. You go to the top 10 and you go find out what they're doing well and how they're doing it. The benchmark for schools is Wisconsin. Governor Walker changed that whole, he's giving the top 10% of their teachers bonuses. He's firing the bottom 10% of the teachers. And that's the paradigm. You know, as a guy who's fairly well educated, you know, it's a simple problem. So you take the schools and you take the kids. Right now, what do we have? An amalgam, right?
Yeah.
For classes.
Right.
You take them, you have a special ed class continues because there's a reason that they're separated. Then you take the lower performing people and separate them into groups, the middle performing and the high performing. Everybody wins because then everybody's being set expectations higher than they normally would achieve in the amalgam of, because in those amalgam, you've got the malcontents that stir up the classes. The principals won't take action. When I went to high school, my dad was the assistant principal, and he took care of all the malcontents. They went to him. The teacher, to save the students' learning time, the teachers to the office. So 5 seconds, and he was back teaching. Here, even now, my brother's a teacher in Florida. He was forced to deal with the malcontents. And the problem is, who loses?
The kids.
Yeah, all of them.
Right.
It's contact time with the kids. And so they're all losing. And when the slower kids can't follow and they have to slow down the class, middle people lose and the higher people lose. I mean, that's what they do. It's a systems approach to the problem. I mean, I'm an engineer. The first thing you do, identify the problem, take the givens, and then come up with a solution that satisfies those requirements of the problem.
Wow. Have you thought about, I was tossing this idea around the other day, having a system in government. I mean, right now, the only way you do better in government as an employee in government is work inefficiently, get more people working underneath you, your pay grade goes up, you make more money. It's kind of the only reward you're going to get. I mean, I guess you could feel good that maybe you put someone in their place because you've got authority in government. That might make you feel better on the inside on some weird level. But what if there was a system where from within government, you could actually say, hey, I found this inefficiency in government, and if we just change this thing here, we could save a bunch of money.
Do you know Nevada does not have an OIG? You know what an OIG is?
No.
Office of Inspector General.
Really? We don't have one of those?
No.
Seems important.
Oh, it absolutely is important. It needs to be in the governor's office, and I don't care whether they fund it or not. I'm going to establish an OIG in the governor's office.
Okay.
Because right now, all these different directors out there, HR works directly for them. Guess who they're beholden to? They don't care about what the rules are. They care about who they're beholden to. When you have an OIG and you have a statewide human resource department that they drive the rules, I mean, why do we continue? There's in health and human services, there's people with high school degrees that should have masters in social work.
Yeah.
So yes, Office of OIG, you report fraud, waste, and abuse. Employees have a mechanism when they're not being treated fairly, like someone I knew who was pushed in the corner for 7 years and the smartest woman that I ever met, and who had background in adoption, foster care, and had a master's in social work, and was treated like a dog.
Office of the Inspector General.
Yes,
Coming soon.
I'm going to create that in my first 90 days. And if I have to, I'll cut other positions to move the positions over.
Seems like a great idea. Seems like an obvious idea.
Duh.
Yeah. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Oh, it's a big thing because
just not
now
here.
there's nobody have to follow the rules other than the directors. They're the dictator for each of their departments.
So the Inspector General, do they, kind of like you did in the military, hand out bonuses to people who whistleblow on bad operations?
Well, there's
Can
a
they?
couple things. What we did in the Air Force for some time, we had something, I don't remember the exact name of it, but what it was about is good ideas.
Okay.
So anybody with a good idea, anywhere up the chain could approve the good idea. But it took the wing king, wing commander, to disapprove it.
Okay.
So you force people to entertain ideas. See, a successful organization, you always talk about continuous process improvement.
Yeah.
A successful organization has that as part of its culture as a continuing thing. Right now in the government in Nevada, it's frowned upon. We don't want continuous process. We want to do what we've always done, because if you're incompetent, that means, what do you want to do? You don't want to do anything that's going to rock the boat, because what you care about is the gravy train and getting on that gravy train after 20 or 30 years.
Right. Wow. Well, I think that's a great place to end. I really appreciate you coming here, and I think you're a brilliant guy, and I think you've got a lot of good ideas, and I hope a lot of people donate to your campaign and help you out.
I appreciate it.
You would be a welcome change to our state government.
I would. You won't believe how much Nevada will change, and the party.
I appreciate you. Thank you.